It's pretty casual anyway. I nice to meet you, mate. Very thankful that you're doing this. Thanks to Chris for setting this up. I've been very excited about this. So thank you very much. Firstly, mate, just a bit of background on the podcast. So it's kind of a personal education tool for coaches. So I know you've had a long coaching career, but you're one of the rare coaches that I've get to speak to that also had a distinguished playing career. So I've got to talk about that as well. Yeah. And I kind of jump all over the place. So just bear with me and we'll just roll through as we go. Mate, firstly, how's your morning walk? I know you're training for a big walk coming up soon. Have you finally got some sunlight out at Penrith? Are you still at Penrith?
Yeah. No, mate. I was actually started the run at the back end of the walk because I didn't know if I'd get back in time for this meeting. I headed off at 6 this morning and done about 4 hours up through the mountains. Yeah, so it was
how many Ks are you covering in 4 hours?
Oh, about 20. Okay. I do a little bit of during it. I break into a few little jogs too every now and then. I might, run a K here and a K there, just to get the Ks up a bit more. But don't do too much running because I'm a bit scared of breaking down. So
yeah, I feel you there.
I don't want to break down. I don't want a knee going or an ankle going or something before I do the walk. So.
Mate, we'll talk a little bit more about the big walk that you're doing a bit later. But firstly, I got to ask you, mate, how did a bloke from Goolagong end up at the Panthers? How did all that come about?
Well, I went to St. George for a trial originally in about 1978. They were my old side. I loved to follow and watch and all that sort of thing back when Langlands and Smith and all them played. A cousin of mine, Graham Simmons, actually played a few first grade games for him, but played second grade. And where I live at Goolagong, Barry Beef, that everyone would know, he played in the grand final, made a grand final win for St. George and played with all the greats, as I said, Langlands and Smith and everyone goes on. So I was a keen St. George supporter, but I went down there and had a trial and they politely said, go home. So I did. And I went home. I had another couple of years up in the bush, and then I got asked to come down to South Sydney. I had some friends lived down in South Sydney who, knew the coaches and all that at the time. So I got invited down, and I moved down to the Coogee and lived at the corner of Rainbow and something else street there, and I lived with blokes like Peter Tunks and Grant Jones and different couple of different players, but a lot of my mates from Cowra. I lived there for a while, and I trialled with South, but this time I went down and trained with them. So I trained for the 2 months before Christmas, had a week off over Christmas, then trained after Christmas again. Did obviously got set up really well, and I was just about ready to play my first trial for Souths, and I got a phone call from Len Stacker. Len was the coach of Penrith at the time, and he'd been talking to a friend of his called Barry Rushworth, who went away on the 1963 Kangaroos with, that was one of the great Kangaroo sides that went away, one of the best ever. So he went away on that, and he was actually playing up at Lithgow as a captain coach, and he lived at Lithgow and so on. So he said to Lenny Stacker, there's a player up here I think could go all right. So Lenny actually come out to South Sydney and watched me play my first trial match. And at the end of the game, he approached me and said, oh, look, Royce, you have been recommended by Barry Rushworth, and I'd like you to come and have a trial with Penrith. And he said, we've got a trial next week. And I said, oh, listen, mate, I've seen the paper, you got a trial tomorrow. I said, I'll come tomorrow. He said, oh, well, you've played today. And I said, oh, another young. So I went out And for Souths, I played in about a 4th or 5th grade trial. And then I went out to Penrith and I played in a second team trial. And at the end, then sat on the bench for 1st grade. And with about 15 minutes to go, I got put on in 1st grade. So I've gone from the sort of bush to playing 1st grade. And I played against, it was against the Bulldogs in a trial match. And I actually hooked against George Paponis, who was a current Australian hooker. And at the end of the game, Lenny Stacker offered me a contract, and I said, yeah, well, I'll take it. And I think it was a whooping $4,000, I think. So then what happened from there is he went back to the club and to the committee and said, look, we're just going to sign Royce Simmons up. And they said, no, we've got no more money. And so that carried on for another 2 or 3 weeks before they eventually found $4,000 to give me a run. But yeah, I was down at South's trial and actually at the time, and as I said, got invited up quickly, had a game, and within, real quickly I decided, well, I'm a better chance here at Penrith. I had a 5th grade trial with Souths and I ended up playing 20 minutes of 1st grade
the next day.
So, so I thought I liked the chances here a bit better than South Sydney.
Mate, how did it work back in those days? Were you professional players but sort of trained amateur hours, and a lot of guys worked at the same time, or was it pretty much full-time footy back then?
No, it was you trained. During the season, you train Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday morning, but Tuesday and Thursday of a night, and play on Sunday. So you held down a 40-hour job, and like someone from me moved down from the bush, didn't have too much. I'd even take as much overtime as I could. I worked out at Penrith Golf Course. I was a greenkeeper by trade, so I ended up getting a job out there, which you went and got on your own. You didn't get help with jobs or anything. It was you turn up Tuesday, Thursday and Saturday morning and play Sunday. And, as I said, after the game on Sunday, you go across and have a dozen beers, and then you'd be up at 6 a.m. and out mowing the lawns out at Penrith Golf Course.
Mate, what was it like? So that's a pretty rapid rise from bush footy effectively to playing 1st grade, for Penrith Panthers. Plus, you've got the transition of moving from the bush to Coogee to Penrith, and then learning to be an elite player as well. Like, how was the transition at the time for you? Do you remember finding it difficult, or was it easy? And in terms of like moving from the bush to the city, how did you find that as well?
The training I found, and I've always been, one of the better trainers wherever I've gone, well, as a player, not that I've gone to many places, but, I've always put a lot of hard work into training. But when I come from the bush, coming down and adapting to the training, particularly the pre-season training, that was hard yakka. I used to do a lot of things at home I thought were hard, but this just went to another level, when I come down. So that was over the first couple of years adapting to the training. I found the hardest, with just a different level, a lot more professional, and but like nowhere like it is now. But and things like moving down, as I said, you got no help, virtually with finding your own accommodation. Like, I went and seen another player, and he said I could move in with him, and I moved in with him, and a couple of weeks later he moved out, and sort of was there on my own again. And but my wife Leanne, she moved down. Wasn't my wife at the time, just my partner, and we sort of been we've been going out since we were 15, 16 or something. So this stage, I think I turned 21, I think the day she moved in, and so Lamb went and got herself a job. She's worked with accountants before, so she went down and got herself a job. And as I said, I got a job a couple of months before that, and you were just virtually left to fend for yourself. Find your accommodation, find your job. It's nowhere as professional. I'd imagine, if I come down from, Queensland and I was a current Australian rep, I probably wouldn't have had to find my own job, and probably
nowadays
would have had somewhere to move in. But back then, even I think, but when you're a boy from the bush, come down and you just sort of trial and all that. You had to do everything of your own accord, and it wasn't easy. What was great for me, I went home to in the Christmas break. We had pre-season a couple of months before Christmas break, so I went home to see Mum and Dad, and I was telling Mum I was doing it pretty tough, and she said, "Come out here." And she had 4 years. For 4 years, I think I only earned about $28 a week or something as an apprentice greenkeeper, or 32 or something. I can't remember what it was, but I used to give 10 to Mum every week for rent and board and all that. Anyway, she took me out the back and she said, "Here's 4 years rent, mate." So
how good's that, mate?
That was real handy, I tell you. I went back and could even have furniture and all them sort of things. Then we could have a chat.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so that was a bit of a lifesaver, I can tell you.
Mate, what was it like in the early days at Penrith? Because correct me if I'm wrong, when you first started playing regular first grade, Penrith weren't necessarily successful back then. And then when you ended up finishing, I think your last game, you scored 2 tries in the grand final and ended up winning it. So you've been on that journey from maybe not winning a lot to ending up winning the whole thing. What was that experience like? I could imagine that would have been very rewarding. Do you have any memories or feelings from that time that stand out to you?
Yeah, well, it was a long time. It was 12 years, like, as you said, when I first come down the first year, like occasionally, we're at the time, a mob of goers, and we'd go out and all try as hard as we could and all that. But, sometimes when you run into, some of the really good sides, and you were off your game a little bit and they were on their game, and you were running into the, the St. George's and all that of the time. And, you could easily get 50 points past you, and when that was happening, and, and towards the end of the year when the better sides, like Parramatta's and so on, and like the Sterlings, Kennys, Cronins and all that, I mean, we'd, as I said, we'd try hard and you battle, but when you've been beaten and the end of the season's coming and there's not long to go, it got real tough. So I had a pretty, and that happened for quite a few years from when we first went down. So me personally, I just sort of set myself some goals of things like winning the man of the match, as often as I could, and so I sort of, obviously wanted to win the games, but I thought the best way of winning the games is for me to be the best player, and at the end of the game, I really got motivated, and I had a lot of success with that. And I won a lot of them, was the players. That's what I thought was the most important thing. Definitely. So I motivated myself by just wanting to go out and be the player's player every week, and occasionally we beat a couple of them top sides, but it was tough. We got the wooden spoon one year and we ran second, third, last, and all of a sudden, then gradually over the years, our junior league kept getting bigger and better and all that. So I think once we found the trick of using our own juniors instead of trying to bring in people from all over the place. I mean, you still brought in your top players because you might have been short in, you might be short of a front row, you might be short of a fullback, a centre, wing or whatever. We'd still purchase a player, but Penrith's always been very successful when they've used their own people, you know, and brought them through and educated them from a young age. And all of a sudden, Penrith started to do that. They started to, you know, skill their young blokes, and from the ages of 13, 14, and so on, and bring them through and train them up professionally. And then all of a sudden, the Cartwright, Johnny Cartwright, the Guyers, the Greg Alexanders, the Brad Fittlers, that first tier of like champion players. Them four blokes went away in the 1990 Kangaroo side. I think I just mentioned. I didn't mention them on purpose, but them four players, and blokes like Colin Vandervoort and Barry Walker, and players of that all come through our system or were brought down here very young from the bush. When I say young, they were brought down as, as soon as they finished their school, and they went into the system as well. So, that's always been the best. And even this year when they won the comp, again, a big part of it was our local juniors.
So when you won that first premiership, do you think it was just a matter of the timing of the club deciding we're going to develop our young players and bring them through, and they just all happened to peak and arrive at the same time and be in their prime? Is that where you put that change down to?
Yeah, for sure. And I think I'm probably giving myself a bit of a rap here, but I don't mean to. But I was lucky enough to play for New South Wales in 1986, and we won the series 3-0. And that had never happened. We beat Queensland at 3 years, so a lot of New South Wales people made the Australian side, and I was lucky enough to make the Australian side, and I think that was good for all the other juniors at Penrith. Even though I'm not a local junior, I've been here, played all my life here, and I treat myself as a local, so local junior, and I think by me getting into that side, through the victory of New South Wales and whatever, then getting into Australian side, I think a lot of players like the Greg Alexander, John Cartwrights, and them sort of blokes, all of a sudden they believe that, they say, well, look, we play with that little fat bugger every week and we're all better than him. Why can't we? Why can't we make the side? So as soon as they woke up, they went straight past me, threw me out the door and kept going. And
I suppose once if someone's never done something before and then they see one of their own doing it, they go, oh, it's possible. Because you were the first Penrith player to play for the Blues, weren't you?
Yeah, I was the first. No, not for the Blues, for Australia.
For Australia.
Yeah.
Mate,
the Blues, but not Australia.
Well, I want to ask you about the Blues shortly, but I want to ask a little bit more about that premiership win. So when we first hooked this conversation up, I put a couple of posts on social media going, if anyone has any questions for Royce, please let me know. And I think I had about 10 messages from people going, tell the bugger he still owes me a beer.
Mm.
What's that all about?
Oh, well, silly enough, after the win, and that was my last game in the NRL. So I a bit carried away up on the stage, and I'd like to have a drink with everyone after the game. Well, and to be quite honest, mate, I think in Penrith itself, I think I've done them about 3 times over. But they mustn't be locals, I don't think.
Oh, that's awesome. But
so I can be anywhere in the world, and I've been like in Hawaii walking down the street and someone's yelled out, "Simmons, you still owe me a beer." And I've had it, doesn't matter where you go, there's always someone who hasn't forgot. So I've as I've got older, I've changed the rules. They've got to buy me a beer.
Yeah, it's a good. I was going to say it's a good tactic to get free beers nearly everywhere you go. Hey, do you have any memories from that grand final that stick out to you? Obviously you scored 2 tries. Your last game as a Panther, like, is there any like, how do you look back upon that day, that week in your life, that year? Anything stand out?
To me, it was relief, to be honest. I remember in the bus going home, and Chris Mortimer, who played with us for a few years, he played the previous year, but he retired. He was in the bus coming back with us, and he said, "You don't look too excited." And I said, "Mate, I'm just relieved. I feel that good, but I'm just not excited. I'm just relieved that I finally won a grand final, because, I mean, there's a lot better player than me that's never won a grand final." And, I think when you always think it's just going to happen, but, it took to that final game. But during the game, I thought Greg Alexander was just outstanding through the game. I remember that, how he just took control of the game, and just, his kicking game was exceptional. And he even kicked a field goal at the very vital time to, put us 1 point in front. And then he kicked the goal at the last conversion that meant that they couldn't beat us. It was only like a minute to go or something. So I just remember all the things he did in the game was just, he was outstanding. People, come to me all the time and say, "Oh, you should have been man of the match." And I think, "You must have been watching the wrong game, you people." I said, "I think Greg Alexander was man of the match. He was just sensational." And I know we lost our way a little bit after I scored the first try. We sort of got a bit excited, and we went away from our game sort of plan, what we were going to do and how we're going to do it. We went away from that, but we were lucky half time come, and we could get inside and settle down and talk about things and get things organised. And then we went back out, and it was a Mark guy got sin bin for 10 minutes, and honest to God, it was a try. To this day, no one's ever been able to tell me why it wasn't a try. He got sin bin for saying a few words to the referee about it not being a try, and he got sin bin. And that's when Alexander really took over the game, and we were playing a champion side. Canberra was just a freak side, like Stephen Walters, Ricky Stewart, Bradley Clyde, Mal Meninga, and the list just goes on. There's another, of just champion players, and Glenn Lazarus, and it just goes on. And to beat them, we had to play for that. There's a 30-minute period in the second half where, even today, watching the modern day players today, how they can control the game, and we weren't far away from it. We virtually just took the ball off Canberra for about 30 minutes through Alexander's kicking, and we played very close to the perfect game of football. And we only just beat them then. They were a champion side, and that was what was so pleasing, I think, about winning the grand final. Is the end of the day, we knew we beat the best, and they were certainly the best up to that game.
What were the celebrations like in Penrith for the next day, week, month, year? I could imagine that would have been all time after that game.
Yeah, I don't think I got home for a day or two, and the wife wasn't over happy, I don't think. And but anyway, the whole town, like coming back, it's even this year pretty similar. It went off this year, to be honest, and it was during COVID, but cars were just driving around the streets, pipping horns and carrying on. But it just reminded me of the 91 grand final a bit. Like, we're coming along the M4, and people had banners across the road, all made up from one end of the M4 to the other. And I was panicking a bit, because I was worried about driving through the banner and people, getting pulled under the bus, I was petrified because there's people everywhere along the M4. And then we got back to the club. Well, it's a massive club, Panthers, but there was just no room for anyone else. They just had to stop them, and every room was chockers. And we went from one room to another room to another room, and they greet everyone and say good day. It was a pretty special 48 hours or so, and I was then it all become we had breakfast. I know we had breakfast the next day without going to sleep, and I think we went through that nearly the next day. So it was a pretty big day by everyone, but we enjoyed it. The town enjoyed it, and fortunately they still talk about it, which is great. And we've had 2 grand finals since, and but I don't compare the sides at all. Everyone was their own time, and it's like people say to me, could you think you could beat the current players? And I said, no, they beat us by 100. They're too big, they're too strong, they're too fit, they're too this, they're too everything. Yeah. And everyone says, oh, well, and I say, but listen, it's like the world, everything gets better. Cars get better, your food gets better, everything medication gets better, everything gets, and the footballers get better. That's just how it is. And because you're more advanced and you're able to prepare yourself better for whatever you're doing.
And tell me what it was like to get picked to play for the Blues for the first time.
Yeah, well, that was 1984. Yeah, and we actually played at the cricket ground. And I was thinking, well, the first scrum is just going to be on, and it was, and it never hardly stopped. The whole game they were brutal games. It was just, and it was the game at the cricket ground where the cricket ground was just covered in water, and we were in the game, and there was nothing too much about the game, and we were in it, and someone chipped, I can't think who chipped the ball, come off the crossbar, and Greg Dowling caught it on his fingers underneath the post. It hit the crossbar and went straight down, didn't go up. It hit the crossbar and went down. Greg Dowling, or it might have went up, for a metre or so, but it went down really quick. And Greg Dowling caught it in his 2 little fingers, I think, and scored under the post, which was the difference in the game, really. And that was game 2. That was the first game I got picked. And then we went to Queensland and in game 3, and we won that one, but we lost the series 2-1. Yeah.
What was State of Origin as big and it's huge now, but was it as big back then as it is now, or was it something that developed over time?
No, it was massive back then. It could even be big. Look, I wouldn't even be surprised if it was bigger than now, as in the people following it and getting behind it, and the hatred of the 2 sides. Like, a lot of it was a lot of fighting in them, before you got sent off for sin bin. So, nearly every scrum was a punch on, and it was a fear. Yeah, and the games were so much quicker than club football back then. It went to another level. You had the best of the best playing, and the speed. Play a club game, then go to that, then come back to a club game. It was amazing how much slower the club games were compared to getting all them, they're getting the best players out there and playing it. And I don't know, it was the atmosphere too. Like, you go up to Queensland, the atmosphere, I think one game there, I think in 85, I wasn't playing that particular game, but I think they threw a lot of bottles onto the field, and I think they were all directed at New South Wales heads. They weren't full, so you could have a quick drink. They were aimed at you. So, it was just and just going to a game, like, I remember 84 and 86, 87, when you actually drove, you got in your bus and you went from the motel out to Suncorp Stadium. We were driving up some roads, and they were either side rocking the bus. The bus could hardly move because it had fans either side of it, and the bus was actually rocking. And I'm thinking, bloody hell, where are we going here? This is, one of my first games when I wasn't used to it, and it was frightening, I tell you. When you're going out, you've got to be ready to throw a few early, and every tackle you made had to be hard, and every time you run the ball had to be hard. I think State of Origin just got that way. It's pretty simple to run hard and tackle hard. And then, people say that's old school, but at the end of the day, that's eventually what happened. It was a hard game.
What was bigger for you, getting picked to play for Australia or getting picked to play for New South Wales?
No, it's Australia without any doubt. Don't get me wrong, playing for New South Wales, we had to play for New South Wales, and you had to beat Queensland to basically get into the test side, unless you were one of the greats, that like the Wally Lewises and the Brett Kennys and Peter Sterlings, and then, well, obviously they made the sides anyway. But to get to the Australian side, for someone like me, I had to get in and make sure we got a series win up, which led to me getting picked for Australia. But no, I often hear people say, "Oh, I'd rather play for my state than my country," but no way in the world for me. It's not even like, don't get me wrong, I give me all my best for New South Wales. I want to do, but there's nothing better than playing for your country. No, nothing at all.
What memories stand out from your time playing for Australia or New South Wales? The characters. I couldn't imagine back then. You didn't have the media scrutiny, the social media, and things like that around the game. So you would have played with some of the great characters of the sport. What moments, what people stand out for you from your time playing for the Blues and the Kangaroos?
Oh, well,
if you can talk about it.
Yeah, no, I can talk. Look, all the boys were, fantastic. We went away on like the Kangaroo tour, and in 1986. So they said we need a car, so we got over there. So 4 of us flew in. There was Wally Lewis, Gene Miles, Stephen Roach, and myself. So 2 Queenslanders, 2 New South Wales. So we went and bought ourselves some little yellow bomb that we paid $200 for. I think we threw $50 in each. And when we go somewhere, we thought someone else might break into or anything. My job was to get on the roof and jump up and down, so the roof went down level with the seats. Then, so no one could pinch our car. So then at the end,
push it up.
My job was to get in and put my feet under, because I was a smaller, and push the seats back up so the bigger boys could get in. Well, they did help me squash it a bit, but my job was get in and push them all back up, because you imagine big block of Roach and Gene Miles, someone as big as them, trying to get in unless we got the thing back up. But I was just thinking, and how would the car, we just, and the people at the motel used to come to us, please don't put the cars in the car park. We don't want to scare people away who want to come and stay. So we'd have to park the cars out the back somewhere. And it was just it was funny things that never hurt anyone else. I think they're the good characters, and I never got to play against or with Alfie Langer, but he's a character. I've got to know. I've went back to the Caxton pub after taking, later on in life, taking some sponsors up to watch the Origin matches, and you come back and here's Alfie dancing on the table, and everyone's taking him over like the security guards are taking him over a beer, so he can have a beer while in between his dancing. So he's dancing on the stage, and everyone watches him. And next thing, someone else gets up and to join him. Some local bloke in the pub gets up. Well, 2 seconds later, he's grabbed by the collar and the bottom of the trousers and thrown straight out the front door. Alfie continues to sing and carry on. That's I mean, and everyone's enjoyed it, watching him dance. I think, but they're the good things I remember. Things that never hurt or offend anyone, but you can get a good laugh out of them.
And I'm sure guys like Wally Lewis or Alfie Langer could pretty much do anything in Queensland and be fine.
Well, I learned that day back. Yeah, without any doubt.
Hey, tell me about transitioning into coaching. So you finished with Penrith in 91, and then the next year you were coaching over in England. Was that literally like that? You went from player to coach overnight?
Yeah. If I had me time all over again, I'd probably still, if I had me time again, I probably still would have over to England, because I think, over there again, it wasn't, at the time, there wasn't a lot of money in the footy, and it was still very much part-time over there. But obviously the crowds, they turn up and they love their footy in England. It's unbelievable how much passion the supporters have got over there to sing and chant, and the atmosphere. I coached Hull. The atmosphere, I think they'd only get about 15,000 in, but you'd think there was 50,000 in there, and so the atmosphere and everything. But it was good over there because I went over and I had to coach on my own. I had an assistant coach, and I had a second team coach, but I was just the first team coach. I was the trainer. I was a video cutter upper, and you name it. I was everything, because I was the only full-time person there. So anything social, I had to organise it. Players all come in of a night, and so so I started to open gyms about 5:30 in the morning, and bring the boys in, and they do their weights before work, and then train after work to do some ball skills and whatever. And so I had to do everything. So I think I learned a bit there, but then I come back to Australia, and who had a little bit more money in their game by then, and that's when I should have come back, in my opinion, and worked under someone like Tim Shearns, who I did years later when I was at the Tigers. I went to the Tigers as an assistant coach, and there was me and Tim. I wish that period I come back to Australia, and I think it was a great learning skill in England, but when I come to Australia, I think I was ready to do another apprenticeship, a bit much like the first one, but that was on my own. Then I would have went with someone like Tim Shearns, who was just outstanding to work with. Even, I think I would have went with Tim maybe and worked for maybe 4 or 5 years or something like that, then took over coaching. I think coming back to Penrith originally was a little bit hard for a few reasons. One was you come back, you were coaching some of the players you played with.
Yeah.
Which is not easy for both parties, I just didn't have enough probably education in them early years in particular. Then it got a bit hard again, because then Super League come along, and we went with Super League, and at the end of it all, I think the salary cap used to be about 1.8 or something, and I think it went to about 10 million or something. It was something ridiculous. Or maybe not that much, but maybe 6 or 7 million, something like that. And I lost my 2 best players because went with the ARL, Brad Fittler and Matt Single. I got to be two representative players anyway when I lost them two representative players. And then we had to cut back from a salary cap of sort of, I think, 6.5 million to 4 million or something. So I lost me two best players and you end up with a worse side and we're spending a heap more money. So then we had to sort of, for the next few years, you couldn't buy too much. You had to reduce your money and everything. So again, I think through that period of, you know, someone with a bit more experience like me, Tim Sheens, I think I should have been working with him then instead of later on and picking up all the, ideas and how they handle people and all that a little bit better. I would have just changed. Oh, look, I love me time coaching, don't get you wrong, but if I had it again, I would just change it around a little bit like that.
Tell me about Tim Sheens, because to me, like I'm not a big rugby league fan, but to me, Tim Sheens is one of the best coaches in Australia in any sport, really. What's it like working with him? What's he like as a human? What did you take away from working with him?
Well, he just gives you a lot of confidence, you know, and when he like explained, he gives you a lot of confidence in a lot of ways. Like even sometimes he'd be talking to the players, and I'm just sitting there, and he'll say, "Look, I was talking to Royce, and he said I did this at training the other day, or I did this during the game." But Royce said to me, I think we could have handled that difference. Well, I thought things like that would just stay between me and the coach. But he'd tell the coach, he'd tell his players that he got something wrong. And if I had done it like Royce said, you know, I mean, he'd get things a lot righter than I did. But, you know, if he did make a mistake, he'd just tell the whole team that he made a mistake, and if he had his time again, he would have done it this way or done it that way. When you went out, I was the defensive coach, and when I went out to do the defence, he wouldn't even come out. I mean, he'd sometimes come and sit in the stand and watch it, but he just had that much. That was what I owned. You go away with Simo. Like, obviously, we sat down before and worked out how we were going to defend, what style we're going to use and what we're going to do in certain situations. And we dealt with all that as a team. But when I went onto the field, as I said, occasionally he'd come and sit in the stand and watch. He wouldn't do it. But you wanted to work for him. You know, you feel good around him, you enjoy it. And because he shows so much faith in you, you try really hard to repay him.
I like it when coaches show vulnerability. Like one of the things that I hate more than anything is if someone asks you a question and you pretend like you know the answer rather than admitting you don't know. And it sounds like Tim Sheens is one of those type of guys. If he doesn't know something, he's going to admit it, but he'll find it out and he'll admit when he makes mistakes.
Yeah. He goes looking for the answers, you know, and he doesn't mind asking his assistant coach, what is the answer? You know, that's what made it so easy to work for him.
Was it weird for you coaching Penrith after your history as a player there? Obviously, you've mentioned it was weird coaching guys that you played with, but in terms of how you felt going back to a club that you won a grand final at, that you captained at, what was that like? Because I'm going through something similar myself in my own coaching career. I'm coaching at the club that I just finished playing at. And it is weird, even though they're great boys and they're very respectful and very, you know, they're very kind about it. But how did you deal with that at the time?
Now we're talking about coaching against.
No, coaching for Penrith.
Look, no, I loved it. As I said, but I'd do it a bit later, you know, and I'd let them players like educate myself with someone while them other players were still at the club. Then, you know, if you took over, my whole my dream was I'd still be coaching Penrith right now. That'd be my dream. It's I like what the Penrith people are all about, and so I love just mixing and everything with the Penrith people, and I just I know the best thing I could have ever done and did ever do was the coach Penrith and have me time here again. But I just would have set it up a little bit different. But yeah, I don't feel it strange at all. But can I say this? When I helped Tim at the West Tigers, I come down here, I was hoping I'd kick their ass. Don't worry. I wasn't. Was no one saying, a lot of people just say to me, "Oh, who will you barrack for today?" I thought, you've got to be kidding, like the competitive spirit just takes over when you're playing against any side, let alone your old side,
Did you win a premiership with the Tigers as well?
Yeah, as an assistant coach with Tim Shearns, yeah.
What feels better? What feels better, winning it as a coach or winning it as a player? Or how would you compare them?
I reckon as head coach it'd be unreal, but even as an assistant coach, that was a great time in my life. Yeah, that was fantastic because a lot of young kids come through at the time, and just enjoyed. I really enjoy doing a lot of skills with young players, in particular, and just working with them and trying to upskill them, and at the same time trying to, get some toughness into them as well. So I really enjoyed, working, with the young players that come through over there, at the time. And not all of them went on to be in the grand final starting side up, but a lot of kids over there at the time, like Bronson Harrison and the kids like Robbie Farah, of course, and Benji Marshall, and and a lot of, and all there was the Balmain had a really good under 18 side, and the West Tigers had a really good under 18 side. So they both come together, and out of that, there's about quite a few players that went on to play a lot of first grade game, and quite a few end up in the grand final side. So it was just great to work with young players and upskill them and everything then. And even when you're retired and you sit back and you watch and you see some of the boys that here at Penrith and at the Tigers, you go on and you see them play, 200, 250 first grade games, and you think, bloody hell, I helped him a bit when he was a kid, and hopefully little bits a little bit of skill I might have showed him, and maybe a little bit of toughness, whatever. Maybe it just helped a bit, make that kid go around and be so successful. So they're just about all I had it now. All the boys I had something to do with, their father times just starting to get them. So, but anyway, yeah, it's really enjoyable.
Mate, tell me about the big walk you're doing. How did it come about? Obviously, you've had some health stuff come up. Can you talk about a little bit about how the walks come about and why you're doing it?
Well, I had a few. I noticed a few problems starting to develop with myself, and so I went and seen my own doctor, Dr. Normie Southern, and he said, "I will send you and get some tests," and sent me off to see a specialist. And then the specialist said, "Come and see him," of course. And I went down, and I'm thinking, he's going to say, "Oh, well, give you a few tablets for this and a few tablets for that, and everything will be right." But I walked in and sat down, and the doctor said, "Oh, well, you've got a couple of white marks here." He said, they could have been concussions that you might have had, you know. He said, they're over there. He said, but here, this is all Alzheimer's. And I just went, I was just gone, you know.
As you would be.
Yeah, so I wasn't expecting that. I was just expecting a couple of this and a couple of that. And then I was told I had it. So then the doctor spoke to me for another 5 minutes. I can't remember. I just sat there and agreed, and I didn't even know what he was saying, to be honest. I was blown away. So then I went home and had to tell my wife and my family, which was very tough. So that's how it all started. Then I thought, the doctor, I remember he did say to me, one part I remember he saying, he said, you've got to exercise. Exercise is really good for it. And I thought, well, I'll do a bit of running and walking. And I used to run all the time, but I thought I'll start doing a bit of walking, so it went a bit longer, and and go up through the mountains and the fresh air and everything and all that sort of stuff. And so that's I started to do all these walks. Then I thought, well, I'm doing these walks, and it's better when I had my mates with me, and my old former coach who gave me my first opportunity, Len Stacker, he comes walking with me, and Cole Bentley, who played in the centres with us in the 91 grand final, he comes for a walk, and Brad Waugh from the early 80s, my old front row partner, he comes for a walk, and Alan Mayer, who's worked here at Panthers as a strapper manager for, I don't know, nearly as long as me. So we'll go for a walk, and the banter on the walk's great. Everyone's bagging each other and putting a heap of crap on each other, and that's good. That's good, because you've got to be when you're walking, you've got to be on top of your game. Otherwise, there's some champion like Len Stacker, champion bagger. He'll get you down if you're not on top of your game. You've got to be ready to fire back. So, I walk across. I meet him under the M4 bridge. So I've done about 3K before I get there, and then I do another 3K coming home. But then we go for about anything, wouldn't know, could be 15, 16, sometimes 10, but between it, we go for a big walk. And I was doing all that, and I thought, well, every time I've heard about the Alzheimer, the dementia, no one seems to have, like, there's no cure for it. No one. I read an article on a gentleman who said 30 years ago, he said he was 6 months away from solving the dementia, and now 30 years later, he's still 6 months away from it. So no one seems to know what causes it. It's highest death to women there is. So and second to men. So that's why I don't roll too much with concussion. A lot of people say concussions from football would bring it in. Well, I'm no expert at this, but I've never seen any evidence from it. And not too many women play rugby league. Going back 10, 15 year ago, 20 year ago, 30 year ago. Not too many hop in the boxing ring and fight. Not too many of them play Aussie rules. Going back a fair few years, they play it now and they play it good. But you go back a few years, so I don't. I've never seen anything to say concussions caused it. And if I had my opportunity to play footy again, my bloody oath, I'd do it.
So the big walk. So you're going to walk from Goolagong to Panthers Stadium?
Yeah, I'm going
to raise some money. Are you starting a foundation? Is that what I heard?
Yeah, the Royce Foundation, Royce Simmons Foundation, will get off the ground. Well, we hope it. We've applied for it, and we've done all the paperwork, and we're hoping in the next 2 weeks that the Royce Simmons Foundation gets going. Yeah.
Awesome. And that, so you're going to time that from Goolagong to Panther Stadium. Is that for which game is that?
That's for, it's on the 27th. I think it's the Cowboys.
Okay.
It's on the 27th of May. We head off on the 17th of May.
Yep.
And we average about 30K a day. And we're doing a lot of we're stopping at a lot of the towns along the way, and we're supplying some guest speakers, myself and whoever else is available, walking with me that day. The Brad Ficklers, the Kurt Fernleys, the Paul Sirenas, Stephen Roach, and whoever. There's a long list of things. So we'll supply a couple of guest speakers and go to one of the town clubs or whatever. And any money we actually raise on them nights will go to their junior league clubs.
Awesome.
And then, so we give. I want to support that because Country Rugby League, needs a bit of support right now. So, so we're going to support them, and they can have some functions, but we don't want them to donate. Look, if they say to us, look, we met to earn $10 the night, we've earned 11. They want to give me $1. Well, that's if they want to do that at this point, we will. But I don't really want. We want that money to go to the junior leagues and to make them happy and bright, and make sure they've got plenty of gear and equipment to help them. Yeah.
Hey, awesome. I did the drive I went and visited Chris and Sally a couple of weeks ago and drove back from Cowra all the way through the mountains. So I assume you're going that way. It's a beautiful part of the world. I could imagine that's going to be a lot of fun doing that. Can people donate to the foundation?
They can donate, but till we get it going, the money now will go. If we can send any money donations you want to make now. So you just got to go to the memorywalk.com.au. So memorywalk.com.au, click on find an event, scroll down to My Way events, and click on Royce's Big Walk. So that's a bit of a thing we'll try to, but
what I'll do for anyone listening, what I'll do is I'll put the link to that in the show notes. So anyone who's listening who wants to donate and support it, I'll make sure the link's connected to this episode. Royce, that's all I had for you, mate. Thank you so much for your time. I really, really enjoyed talking to you. I'll make sure we get this out everywhere and try and promote the walk as much as possible. And honour, mate. Thank you very much for this.
Mate, and thank you. And thanks to my old mate up there, Chris Cummins, too. He's donated large amount of money to the walk, and thank him.
Yeah, mate, I appreciate it. I'll make sure that I'll send this to him today so he can have a look.
Yeah, and tell him to send me down some Cowra land, will you?
I will. Right, great. Thanks, Royce. You have a great day, mate, and I really appreciate it again, mate.
Thanks, mate.
Have a good one.
Cheers.